Hello, everyone. Today, I would love to talk to you about some recent events that have been happening. Have you been following the Gabby Petito story? It's one of the most popular news reporting happening these days. And in case you're one of those rare people that haven't heard about it, it was having to do with a young lady. She was popular on, I think, YouTube and Instagram. And without going into many details, you can look it up yourself. She was, I guess, murdered, according to the FBI. And her fiance or boyfriend was traveling with her and came back with her vehicle alone without her. He has disappeared, and so that's what's going on in the news these days, trying to find him and find out what happened. There were a lot of things that were released related to this. Before that, there was an incident, which we have the recording from the police officer's body camera. There has been one of the most recent developments was that they released a second police body camera video, and that has more information that wasn't available to us. And that is actually what I would like to talk about, not necessarily their situation, but kind of learning from that situation. I want to talk about the topic of anxiety and anger and, tools that we have, just anyone can have available to themselves, but also a couple other steps that if you're a follower of Jesus, you have available to yourself. And who knows, maybe even if you don't consider yourself a Christian, you might want to adopt some of these lessons or views that we have available found in the Bible. So that's what this video is going to be about today. Something that struck me as I was looking at the first police officer body camera video that they released, I don't remember how long ago, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. And I remember watching that and kind of observing what other people had to say about that, comparing my observations with their observations. One in particular, I listened to an observation made by these people that say they're professional, like body language experts. And I kind of was a little surprised to hear that they didn't perceive the same things that I did. And of course, we all kind of have our different experiences in life, so that kind of, I guess, impacts the way we interpret certain things. So having researched and learned things about abusive relationships in the past, and I'm always wanting to learn from the experiences of other women that share their stories. When I saw that first video, my impression, and I'm no expert here on psychology, and I'm not saying that I know what happened with their particular situation, but my perception of that first video was that her fiance seemed to be placing everything on her behavior. It seemed like everything was just kind of like it was her erratic behavior. It was her, the one that would have gone to jail, had that on her permanent record. I'm not sure if she would have gone to jail, or what I'm saying is that she was the one that, given the information that they were sharing on that first video, it seemed like she was going to be the one that was like the troublemaker, But I kind of picked up on how it seemed like nobody was focusing on what might have caused her to be in such a frantic mode, I guess. And I happen to believe that often when women become violent, because according to that police officer's report, she was the one that slapped him first. And that's what she admits on the second video as well, along with other information, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But usually it seems to me that from what I've heard, when women become violent, it's because there's like this severe disrespect happening. And then I'm not saying that they're not responsible for their own actions. That's actually what we're going to be talking about in this video. But it's just something that I've observed is that the other person is not innocent in a situation like that. A person does not just decide, usually, unless there's something else going on in that person's mind or something. A person usually has a reason for feeling like they have to slap a person. And I'm not saying that that's ever justified, but I'm just saying that from that video, the guy didn't seem to be explaining what he was doing. And in the way that he was explaining, actually what he did explain was that he explained it in such a way like he was calm the whole time. He was the rational person. He did not say anything about like how she was so quick to say, these are all my faults, I'm responsible for all these things, even like blaming herself for perhaps his actions as well. I didn't hear that from him. It was all just kind of like she is the reason why, somebody called the cops. And actually it was interesting because based on the first video, it seemed like he didn't do the things that the witnesses that called the cops on them, they said that he was the one that was like hitting her. Based on the first video, she admitted that both of them pretty much said that she hit him. But it wasn't until the second video was released recently, just a few days ago, that the other video camera, I guess it must have been a different cop, he noticed her wounds because only her fiance's wounds were mentioned in that other video. But in this video, that officer noticed that she had some like dry blood or like a wound. It looked fresh, and he asked her about it, and it seemed like she wanted it almost seemed like she wanted to protect him. And she admitted that, kind of like not wanting to, but she did admit that he did hit her, but that she's to blame because she hit him first. Obviously, like no one should hit anyone, but you definitely never deserve to be hit in return for you doing that thing. So a few things there that are off as well. So what we can tell is that there's this young couple that on social media, they seem like they're in love, and the words that they say about each other seem very loving. But then behind the scenes, there are some problems, and a close friend of hers allegedly shared that they were having problems a few times in the time that her friend knew her. So there's a lot that we don't know, but what we can know is that there was definitely a physical altercation. And also, another thing I wanted to talk about was that she disclosed, I think more so on the second video, that he was telling her to shut up. And I think that was what she seemed to imply that was the reason why she slapped him. And again, I'm not saying that that's justified, but it seems that what was going on was that she felt out of control because the boyfriend also supposedly in his, the way he explained it, he was saying that he was trying to de-escalate the situation, which I think it's very hypocritical. And I mean, I would not be able to know for sure if that was the situation, right? But I'm kind of skeptical when it comes to these type of things because, like I said, usually the person reacting to and in violence, it seems that it could be because the other person is actually the one that is escalating a situation in their behaviors, whether even if it's not a physical behavior, these like very disrespectful words or behaviors, mannerisms, even just being overly controlling, because apparently he wasn't giving her the keys. He took control over the vehicle. It wasn't letting her in. She said that she didn't want to just stop. She wanted, because they needed to go get water. They were like in the middle of, I don't know, nowhere. It seemed very dry place. So I don't know, was she dehydrated? Was this like a severe situation? She did disclose another thing I wanted to share. She disclosed that there was that she has problems. I think OCD was one of them, but also that she has anxiety. I think she was asked because the officer noticed that she seemed to be hyperventilating in the beginning when he was trying to talk to her. So this was part of the conversation in the second video, which I also want to talk about. It's all going to come together, I promise. And I didn't realize I was going to share this much about the situation, but it's relevant to what we're going to talk about. I'm almost done talking about their situation, I promise. But the police officer, he chose to open up about his own personal life. And he said, because she had mentioned that he has anxiety as well. So the police officer said that when he used to be married to his ex-wife, both of them had anxiety, and both of their anxiety played off of each other. So it escalated situations. And he said, that's why she's my ex-wife now. Whereas the lady that he was with, I don't know if it's his new wife or girlfriend, but he said the new one, she has a way of kind of like bringing that down in him. And so that's a better match. And he was advising her to consider he said, this might not be good for your soul. When two people have anxiety and you already experience a situation like this, I think he was pretty much recommending that she break things off with this guy. And after that situation, they were separated. They were told to sleep in different places. One of them slept in the van, the other one in a hotel, I think, or a motel. So later on, I guess it might have been like a few weeks later, that's when everything unfolded, where that's what the FBI and other, I think his name is Dog, and I think even the guy from America's Most Wanted, several people have decided to join the efforts of finding him and trying to get justice for this homicide. So, okay, now that we have the context, and before I start talking about my own thoughts about anxiety and anger, I want, again, to just full disclosure here that I'm not an expert, so I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts, just food for thought, okay? I'm not talking into anyone's life experiences, okay? This is just something for you to consider. I'm not telling you to do something in this video. I'm just talking about this topic. Also, I don't want to be misinterpreted by making light of abuse of any kind. I think before I talk about everything else, I want to make the point that it's important not to cover crimes. And it's sad because in other places of the world, it might not be a crime to like hit women. It might be the culture. I've recently heard the story of this one very famous Christian wife where her husband became the, like the person that represents the persecuted Christian church in the world. I don't have their names here, but pretty much he was set free from, I think it was Iran, and his wife had fought for years with political leaders and asking for their help, and finally they were able to release him, but she ended up opening about the abuse, all kinds of abuse happening in her marriage. And so the church leaders that were helping her, they wanted her to just stay in her marriage, even though she feared for her life and the well-being of her children as well. She felt like he was just going to take them back to Iran, where she doesn't have rights as a woman, and a lot of things. You can hear her story. I found it on Twitter. I'll link those videos. They're 2 parts. I'll link that on the bottom as well. So I mention this because, unfortunately, in our Christian circles, many people may just downplay all kinds of abuse. And I don't believe that the Bible supports any kind of abuse in marriage or in relationships as well, from either side, the man or the woman. There should be no abuse. And even you'll find Bible verses, for example, that talk about how the husband is not to be harsh with his wife. So if he's not to be harsh, then that means obviously physical, but obviously as well emotional. So the church should not be supporting marriages to endure any type of abuse. If anything, the church should be an accountability for this behavior to stop within the home. Another thing, if it needs to be reported, it needs to be reported. If there is any physical thing that happens, even if it's going to ruin your reputation or your job or anything, it needs to be reported. And this is why. Because often couples won't do that, and then that's why these behaviors continue to happen. If everybody knows from day one of a relationship, even, if anything physical happened, our rule is we will call the cops, and then from that alone will hold so many people accountable for themselves, which is very important, but for the other person as well. And there's this agreement that there will be no losing self-control, and we will not conduct ourselves in this way. So I think it's very important, especially also because if the sad situation happened where someone did have to call the cops on someone, the police have a way of helping you to see a bigger perspective of what your actions, if you continue down this path, this violent path, what your life can look like. And they can, if you're a parent, for example, they can help you to be more sober-minded and realize, hey, you could lose your kids because this is not allowed. There are laws against this. And so I think, I've had in the past neighbors where that was kind of the thing, and then it just kept happening over and over, and police would be called, and they had children, and I think there were some consequences in the future. And just, it's so important for these behaviors to be stopped from the very beginning. I want to put that out there, that I'm not saying that it's right to just live under those conditions. Also because of how much I believe that people should not divorce. Like, that's, to me, personally, I have great convictions about marriage, but at the same time, I think that we can't just have a general rule for everyone. I think that like there are certain situations where what we would like for that family to look like, maybe it's not the situation for that family. And also, like, I by the grace of God, I think that what I'm going to discuss in this video in a little bit, I think there are some steps where you could make some life-changing changes that might lead you into a better future, even if you have gone through these things that should not be happening in marriage. So again, I'm not telling you to do one thing or the other, just food for thought. So, and always, no matter how you decide to deal with your own personal situation, remember to be wise. Remember to do things the correct way, meaning in the safe way. So that's where you would have to, talk to someone personally, someone close to you that you can trust about your situation, and you guys would be able to come up with a safe plan. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about anxiety first. I feel like I'm losing my voice, so let me drink a little tea. Okay, anxiety. In the video that we were talking about, both of them have anxiety, and the police officer asked her if she has any medication to help her with that. She said no, all she has is yoga. And I felt so sad for her in that moment. I felt like I just felt for her because I grew up with a lot of anxiety. So my heart goes out to her. And sometimes that's just your normal and you don't realize, hey, you could be in a better place. And, good thing she was trying. That's actually something that a lot of doctors these days will recommend yoga. I've heard some things about yoga as a Christian that it's not necessarily the best thing to do as far as like because of the religious origins that are associated with yoga, and certain positions represent certain things, and that it could be like a spiritual thing. That's not necessarily something that Christians that are following Jesus are supposed to be engaging in. So I personally have passed on using yoga as an anxiety solution. But it seems like maybe the police officer has experience with medication if he asked her that question. So something else, deep breaths. That's pretty safe and pretty non-controversial, right? If you've never heard of it, counselors will usually tell you take like a deep breath from your nose. And I think it's like 4 seconds. You take a deep breath for 4 seconds. You hold it for another 4 seconds. And then you release it through your mouth for another 4 seconds. And you can do that maybe 2 or 3 times. I've heard that helps with like your brain somehow. Sorry, not an expert, so I don't know. But I've heard a lot of people say that it's very helpful to them. And so, medicine would be definitely a good resource, especially if you're going to have like a doctor that will walk with you and continue to give you the plan, and kind of recommend certain dosages, like little at a time. And you talk about your symptoms and your concerns, your questions. That's like the safe way, I think, that anyone could try medication for anxiety if someone really needs it. You might be surprised at how much it helps you. Medications don't work right away. It takes a few weeks, but so that's something that definitely might have helped her and perhaps even him with their own anxieties. A counselor definitely is a great resource. Someone that's not just interested in getting all of your money. You can kind of tell sometimes because the kind of advice they give you is going to take like 20 weeks for you to finish like talking about one thing. Or your first visit, like you get no help at all on your first visit, things like that. Find a counselor that will be helpful to you. Like I said, like even if you don't necessarily get a Christian counselor, as a Christian, you know what you will accept, and what you'll reject. Maybe your counselor doesn't give you necessarily the Christian advice that you need, but as a Christian, you should be learning those things in your own life. You have a pastor, you can get pastoral counseling from them, so you can kind of try to find a way to have that complete counseling experience. Usually, churches will offer counseling for free. Family support. In my experience, it's been really nice to feel that I have one person in particular in my family that if I need to talk to about something, I can go to that person and they won't make me feel bad. They'll just understand and be supportive of my decisions. So definitely that helps so much, just to have someone you can talk to, or just to feel like there's someone in your life that understands you. Sometimes people in your life won't understand your experience and might even make you feel pretty crummy about what you're going through. So if even in a relationship or in a marriage, if you don't have that support, that understanding, because maybe also the situation might be as it was for them, maybe your own spouse or your own, partner, whatever, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever, maybe they have their own anxiety problems, their own things that they're dealing with, their own stress, and you're kind of just lost in your own experience sometimes. So it's so good to have someone you can talk to, because what you don't get in your relationship, you will get it just being understood, being heard, being helped. So it's very important to make sure you're talking to someone that can help, that knows what you're going through and can give you some insight. So those are the typical things that anybody can use to help them with their anxiety. I think when someone is going through anxiety, they really feel like they need to be heard. And that's just so like therapeutic, just to feel that you're heard, and just walking through all of your thoughts. Sometimes you don't know until you're talking about it, or maybe even writing about it. Then you're learning things about yourself. And so it's very important to feel that other people agree with you. That's a good thing to have. You should definitely not isolate yourself in your pain, in your anxiety, in your depression, whatever you're going through. People that are going through anxiety need to feel respected in particular. So it's such a vulnerable thing to express all of your experience, especially because you don't know how someone will react. You don't know if someone's going to make you feel less than them. And so sometimes if people are not respected, then that just hurts even more, because you're being very vulnerable and the other person's just being so rude and so hurtful. People underestimate, I think, how much pain they can cause someone when they are disrespectful to them, when they are belittling them, when they're calling them names, when they're telling them to shut up. Like, I don't care about what you have to say. Stop talking. It's controlling. It's not good. It's not good at all. The Bible, Jesus taught us that even calling someone a bad name is grounds for, like, I think he was implying like going to hell. Like, I think he was showing us that what we might, try to make it seem like it's not that bad, it's actually a huge deal. It's actually so sinful to belittle someone through our words. And so that causes a lot of pain, emotional pain. Often physical abuse is seen as more damaging than emotional abuse, verbal abuse. And often I think the people that think that are the people that have never experienced the damage that emotional and verbal abuse can cause to a person. That type of abuse will cause reactions to a person's physical body. They will cry, they will become anxious, they will be just constantly stressed over what happened, they will become depressed. All of that affects the mind. And when the mind is affected, the body also becomes affected. There are so many illnesses, things that can happen, all related to stress, anxiety. So it's not, emotional and verbal abuse should not be separated from physical abuse, because it is physical abuse. Sometimes people live with the effects of what happened a long time ago, because it was just so stressful to a person's body, and things can spiral from that terrible situation that a person had to live through. I just wanted to say that real quick. People with anxiety need to process these things, like I already mentioned. You'll learn a lot of things, as often when you're talking things through, you're learning. So it's important to process. It's important for people in a relationship to feel that they can talk about these things, because it's in their best interest, as well as the person that is supposed to be listening. They can better understand what the person's experience is, and maybe they can think of ways that they could help in a situation. And most of all, you need to feel that you are loved. Being listened to is a loving thing that we can do for anyone, not just our loved ones or the people closest in our life, just anyone. It's loving to listen. And when these things are not happening, and somehow we know that something is wrong in my relationship, something is wrong. You're supposed to love me. You're supposed to do all these things. Even little children know these things. They feel like something is wrong if we don't do certain things that are loving, right? So unfortunately, many people grow up not really learning to think through these things. People often grow up with anxiety and they don't even realize what's going on with them. They don't have the tools to help them, the people, the resources, all of that. Often, I think that's why you see situations like this happen, where things become violent. The Bible gives us other steps that we are supposed to incorporate in our life, like self-control. That is pushed definitely strongly in the Bible, that we are to have self-control. So we don't just act upon our feelings. We have to remember what the Bible teaches us. And I want to read some Bible verses having to do with these things. And like I said, if you're a follower of Jesus, you definitely have to incorporate this in your experience. If you're going through anxiety or anger, you need to incorporate this in every area, no matter what relationship you have in your life. We have prayer also to help us. We can pray to God in those situations where we just feel anxiety is leading to anger. And you want to be very careful when you're right there, because anger can lead you to do things that are terrible. In those situations, we need to remember what the Bible teaches us. We need to remember that it holds us accountable. We need to remember to pray. Take a pause, go pray, tell God what you're experiencing, the feelings you're having, anger, rage, you want vengeance, whatever it is. Say it to God and ask for Him to help you. Remember that we have hope in God. We can trust that God is going to intervene. He's going to help in one way or another. And you can do this experiment in your own life. After you pray, just watch and see, okay, maybe the next day, maybe God spoke to that person, brought some situations in their own personal life that put them in the situation that they were putting you in. All kinds of things can happen. I've seen it in my own life where one time I felt like I wasn't being heard, and then like later on, not too long after, like a situation happened outside of our control, and that was like another way that solved the problem I was having that I wasn't able to solve at an early point in my marriage. Especially in the beginning of any relationship. Again, some people might have learned those skills early on in life. Maybe others didn't have the best example, or you just resist doing the thing that you know you're supposed to do. So it's just one of those things that with God's help, we should be growing in our character and maturing. And that should be the case in our relationships as well. Those are the things that we should be doing as followers of Jesus, as well as the things that I already said, seek out the counselor and all those things that I shared. But you probably will fail because we're not perfect. And that's not an excuse, but it's just reality. We are sinful and we don't do what God tells us to do all the time, but we should try to do what God tells us to do all the time. But in that situation, when you fail, it can lead to an anger. And anger in itself is totally fine, because anger indicates that something is wrong. But when you let that anger get out of control and go further than that, that's when the bad things happen that you regret and that really mess up your life, So in that situation of anger, remember that you need time to be introspective. Like I said, pray. Take some time to figure out what's going on with you. Also, it's a really good idea for you to figure out what is a trigger. Where's the limit, the line, the point of no return? What has been just too much that you decided to do something that you shouldn't have done? When you realize, okay, it's when I started to feel this way, it's when this behavior started to happen, then in the future, when you start to feel those things in you, when you start to see those behaviors in the other person, that's when you take a step back, because you're not at that rage, anger point. You're not at that point of no return. It seems that way, right? So that's when you have learned the right tools, how to de-escalate a situation in a way not like that guy did, where he was controlling her. She didn't want to do it the way he wanted to. In a way that maybe you guys have had a conversation in the past, you agreed, okay, in a situation where things are getting too heated, this is what we agree we'll do. So when that situation is happening in real time, you calmly, respectfully, you stop engaging and you respectfully tell the other person, let's do what we agreed, and we'll talk about this when we calm down a little bit later. Always being respectful, always it being the other person's choice to agree. It's a mutual agreement. It's not the same thing when you tell the person something like, get out of this house, you need to cool off. No. If the other person wants to go for a drive, then that's their decision, So always being respectful. So definitely don't try to control the other person or how they choose to calm down. And again, we need to have self-control. When we are angry, we need to have self-control. Hopefully, the way that we learn to deal with these difficult situations in life will also be a good example for the people in our life. And it won't be as difficult for them when they're older, or even in the age that they're at, for them to learn how to manage their own feelings, because they will have seen us do it the right way. Another thing, and I'm finishing already, so the last things I wanted to say about this is that we need to always remember to go to God first, and definitely never replace God with another person. Even that if that person is yourself, you may feel like, I can handle it, I don't need God for this, I can do it on my own strength. We need to be humble and realize, hey, we need God for everything all the time. If it wasn't for God, I couldn't do a single thing. I couldn't even have the next breath. So we need to ask God to help us in our relationships, in our anxiety, in our anger. Whenever we make the wrong decision, we need to apologize. We need to ask God to forgive us and ask the people that we hurt to forgive us as well. And, make sure that you are not repeating those things, that you continue to ask God and others for forgiveness. Make sure that you're committed to making better choices in the future. Let's stop trying to change other people and just focus on ourselves. Focus on our part, what we can do. And trust that God will deal with the other people, that God will help them with their own issues. And hopefully you're going to be a good example. In the way that you conduct yourself, you're naturally going to de-escalate things. Now, this is not to say that this is the solution for people that are being physically abused, verbally abused, and all of that. In those situations, and any situation, the first thing that goes wrong, I don't care how early you are in your relationship, especially when you're just dating, because how wonderful would it be for you to deal with those wrong behaviors even before getting married? And if those behaviors are not changing, then maybe that's not someone you want to pursue married life with, right? So anyway, if you're married, make sure that you're getting the help from other people. You're dealing with those things. You don't have to tolerate those things. If you're in an unsafe situation, you need to find a way to get out of that situation in a safe way. Again, I'll leave those 2 videos from that lady that shared all of the things that she endured in her marriage, and how this very famous Christian leader was trying to get her to stay with this man that she felt almost killed her. So it's kind of sad, because in hindsight it almost feels like this young lady that unfortunately lost her life, no excuse, no matter what she did, she didn't deserve that, right? But we could just learn that, like, evil is evil. I think like the devil, Satan, can influence people in those situations, and just takes advantage of people that are not controlling their anger. And like, as beautiful as you are, as young as you are, as big dreams that you may have, as popular as you may be, as bright as your future may seem, it's just, in life, you need to be wise about who you decide to be in a relationship with, who you trust to go on a long trip with. It just seems like if there was a violent situation that happened, the right thing would have been to just have stayed separated and to have just gone their own way. Because in a stressful situation like that, things were not going to get better. And it's just so sad, because I think when we're young, really young, like their age, I think that you just haven't lived so long in life yet, that you haven't learned a lot of lessons, and you kind of just feel like kind of naive about a lot of things. So it's just so sad. This story has been weighing in my heart, so sad, and I've actually been praying about it. I was so sad, and at the same time I was happy when they discovered her. And I'm praying that that there would be some closure with what's going on with this case. So I hope that this was helpful to you. These are just some of the things that I've been able to learn. along the way, and I find very helpful in my life, and it is bearing fruit in my own life as well. So I'll see you on the next video. If you want to support what I do, please give me a like on this video, a thumbs up. Leave me a comment, share your thoughts with me, share this video, and if you want to support me becoming a patron or just giving a one-time donation, you can find that in my website, and I'll leave that link in the description as well. I'll see you next time. Bye. Joy to the world, love to